Nice to see faces. Nice. Dr. Reeves. It's Dr. Reeves, everyone. I love Dr. Reeves. I love following Dr. Reeves on Twitter, on social media. She's one of the biggest advocates for Paul Laurence Dunbar High School. And very excited to have you share with us this afternoon. To our Chair Emeritus, Linda Chinya, good afternoon to you. I'm not sure if we see other commissioners on just yet, but if you are, please, there we go, Commissioner Kenyabe. Good afternoon, Commissioner, and welcome to the Teaching and Learning Committee. We have some new commissioners joining us, and to all of our staff, good afternoon to each of you. City Schools is unable to do the work that we're doing for our young people, for our students, and for our community without each of you. So everyone, just take a moment to take a deep breath. And release it. Let's try that once more. Just take a deep breath in. And release your breath. Important that we center ourselves for the work that we're going to engage in this evening. This afternoon, we have a presentation, R3, Expanded Opportunities with the focus on advanced placement, dual enrollment, and algebra access. We know that algebra access particularly is critically important to make sure that we are leveling the playing field for all of our young people so that they're not only prepared for high school, college, career, but also for life. Those critical thinking skills we need in all of the areas that we're going to focus on in the presentation this afternoon. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Joan Dabrowski, our Chief Academic Officer. Before we do that, Tanisha, Ms. Moore, do we have any members of the public signed up? I didn't see any on our agenda.
Good afternoon. No, there are no members signed up for public comment tonight.
Thank you. And before we get started, is there any additional information outside of the agenda that we need to prepare for?
No, we're all good to go.
Great. Dr. Dabrowski, we are turning it over to you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner McFadden. Good afternoon, everybody. Excited to be here this afternoon with my colleagues as we share some great news about our work on advanced placement, dual enrollment, and algebra access. I'm going to actually turn this over to our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Jalima Alisea.
Thank you, Chief Dabrowski, and good afternoon, board commissioners and members of our schools community. I am very excited not only to be able to open up for our colleagues to share this afternoon, but also to welcome our school leaders who you will have an opportunity to hear from today. So we're very, very excited about that. And so as Chief Dabrowski shared, we are going to share an R3 update on expanded opportunities. We'll give an update on our algebra expansion, advanced courses, and GAL programming, as well as dual enrollment. And then, like I shared, we have an opportunity to hear from two of our incredible school leaders from Francis Scott Key, as well as Dunbar High School. So today's presentation aligns with board policy, strategic priorities, 1, 2, 6, and 7. And as always, we ground everything in our district goals. So our 3 goals of wholeness, literacy, and graduation. And just a quick note that's here on the slide, we do have a math goal that is currently in the works and will be drafted and finalized by the end of March. As always, we ground everything also in our R3 work, and really where today's presentation lives is in the key strategies of expanded enrichment and academic opportunities, and specifically advanced courses and dual enrollment and algebra access. And so with that, I will actually turn it over to my partner, Carrie Steinbrenner, who will share more updates around algebra expansion.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Carrie Steinbrenner, Director of Mathematics. We'll share with you our algebra expansion update. So for school year 22-23, we were able to add an additional virtual teacher for honors 6th and 7th grade. We know that students need these advanced courses to be fully prepared for Algebra 1 in 8th grade. These 2 teachers that are supervised out of the Office of Teaching and Learning now support 19 schools, which is a growth from just 9 schools last year, and a total of 200 students. Just as a reminder, the virtual model is to support schools that do not have the conditions to have a traditional advanced mathematics course due to staffing or school size. And the third bullet on this slide just shows our overall numbers as a district of the number of students enrolled in advanced honors middle school mathematics, both virtual and traditional. And this next slide, this just has our historical percentages. We've shown this one before. We just added the updated numbers. You can see we've had some ups and downs, but for school year 22-23, this is 22% of our city schools 8th graders that are enrolled in Algebra 1 in 8th grade.
Good afternoon. I guess I'll introduce myself. I'm Dennis Jutras on the Coordinator of Gifted and Advanced Learning, and I work with the wonderful Dr. Laura Ohanian, who at the end of my slides will be introducing one of our phenomenal principals who's joining us today. So if you see the next slide, there's a lot of data points on there, but I'd like to kind of highlight a few things if I may. So if we move into the number of sections just a few years ago, we are twice as many AP sections as we were back in the 2017-2018 year. Same with the number of seats, we're 175% more expansive number of seat offerings for our students. We've more than doubled the number of AP teachers across our district in that span of time. And I especially want to highlight the red box there that shows, if you look at our total number of students of color that are in AP classes, 83.4% of our AP students last year were students of color. That is not the national average. That is not the national trend. That's not what we see time and time again. We have Dr. Reeves on here. I want to shout out Dr. Reeves, who's been a great thought partner in building out the AP work. She and her colleagues have been phenomenal in embracing this work. On the right-hand side, just a few quick highlights. You know, we had a number of teachers last year that got trained. We're already up to 84 teachers signed up for this summer to be trained. We all know the national spotlight on AP African American Studies. More than happy to say that we are chugging along, and the students and the teachers is loving it. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Dunbar has been asked to join the pilot for year 2. So I'm hoping Dr. Reeves will mention that in her presentation later. Not putting things in your speech, but that'd be wonderful to share, because we're very proud of the work that you're doing there anyway. And you can just see that, you know, we're pushing out AP Pre-Calculus and some other things. We can move to the next slide at this point. We did have the opportunity, so we have a person in my office now, Sean Keatley, who came on board as part of a state grant that we were awarded. And we were able to, him leading the charge, along with colleagues from Teaching and Learning, to visit 230 plus AP and pre-AP classrooms across the district. And what we saw was actually very encouraging. We saw dedicated teachers and students, which we felt, but it's good to see, right? And then we also saw that there was clear evidence that the teachers who have been trained, there's clear evidence they're following the course framework outlined by College Board, and they're using many of the resources that we've put out there. And we're happy to say, and this was always our vision, right, is that we wanted a student, regardless of the school they went to, that the AP experience was going to be the same across every school. And we did see largely no significant difference in the presentation and the instruction, whether they were a choice school or a zone school. We want equity, we want equal opportunity for all of our students, and we're seeing that. There are areas, obviously, for growth. Pacing is a concern, and we've shared this with principals. We'll continue to do that. Teachers are still kind of leaning a little too heavily, lifting the work. I don't know if they're afraid of breaking our students, but our students are much more malleable and resilient than that, so we need to honor that. And we have some quick solutions that we've posted over there, many of which just deal with communicating and reaching out across the district to their colleagues. Next slide. So what's next regarding AP and pre-AP? You know, Sean is finishing up visiting. I think he's down to one more school to visit to figure out what makes sense for AP offerings and pre-AP offerings for next year. We always do this every year in January and February to make sure we align with budget season so that we can work in tandem with schools to offer expanded opportunities for our students and for our teachers. We're going to continue to expand our pre-AP sites. This year, there are only 2 schools that were offering pre-AP geometry. Next year, we're already at 10 schools that will be offering pre-AP geometry, and we're going to be moving up to at least 15 or so for pre-AP algebra, which was the trajectory. We expected that to happen. We have a number of schools that will be taking the new AP course offering for pre-calculus for this upcoming year. I mentioned that, some schools nationally were invited to participate in year 2 of the second year of the pilot. We might have a school on the call today that is going to be one of those schools. Continued effort and energy in promoting AP computer science principles as a tech ed fulfiller. And I want to call out, we've long been advocates of AP Capstone. It fits well within my scope as far as gifted and advanced learning, but it's just really good foundational work. I do want to call out to the attention of everyone on this call, in this presentation today, nearly 40% of every student in Maryland last year who completed an AP seminar course was from Baltimore City. And I think that's phenomenal. And that's a course that College Board is really rallying behind, and for every right. Next slide, please. So, of course, I'm not going to do a presentation without a little shout out for the gifted and advanced learning work, even if it's not in the schedule. So I do want to point out the fact that we've tested more than 6,200 students. We're closer to 7,000 now since this slide was produced. We're hitting about a 15.2% identification rate. We started working with Legends of Learning. In fact, we met with them today to talk about gamifying analogical reasoning lessons for pre-K and K students. And what we build in conjunction with them, city schools and their students and their teachers will have access for free forever going forward. We are going to be a national leader in breaking down some of those walls and barriers that prevent students of color and students from under-resourced communities from being seen as gifted learners. We finally hit the 9% identification mark across the district. When we started doing this, keeping track around 6% a few years back. So we're moving. 10% is our goal minimum. So we're getting there. So happy to announce that we once again have 3 eGate schools, Excellence and Talented in Education renewals. Francis Scott Key, you'll hear more about that from someone shortly, Mount Royal and Thomas Johnson. I want to point out to the board and to everyone else, this is the 9th consecutive year that at least one city school has been recognized by MSDE and the Gifted and Talented Advisory Council as an eGate school. This is the longest streak of any district, although any media outlets that would like to jump on this, of any district in the state of Maryland. And we've also entered into a 2-year agreement with research partners at University of Maryland to look into identification measures and metrics for gifted and advanced learning, and to work with our Office of Achievement and Accountability to see if we're being equitable, if there's some tweaks that we can make to help identify more students and also looking to see that once they're identified, how is that affecting them? Are they more likely to come to school? Are they feeling more satisfied? Some of the things we've kind of hit around the edges, but we're going to dive more deeply in with our partners. I believe next would be Laura Ohanian will introduce.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I have the pleasure of introducing Corey Besmanian, who's been a principal in the district for 10 years. And I believe entering his 6th year at Francis Scott Key. I've had the pleasure of working with Corey all of those years. He really is a very thoughtful principal, and he has a very good eye at looking at data and identifying, especially around the continuum learners, the supports his students need. I believe about 30% of his population, a little over, is gifted and advanced and talent development. So I will turn it over to Corey. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I don't want to lose his thunder. So go ahead, Corey. Go.
Thanks, Dr. Ohanian. Pleasure being here. Thank you guys so much for having me. Just a little bit of quick background. It's my 18th year. Actually started my career at FSK as a teacher. I taught in room 112 right down the hallway here. Taught social studies, taught here for 5 years. Moved on and was a principal of another school in West Baltimore for 4 years and had a chance to come home. So I've been here for 6 years. Feel like 95 to 90%, 90 to 95% of PD my first 5 to 7 years was always centered around special education and students that needed extra support. And there was very little kind of conversation around gifted advanced learning. Then comes Dennis Jutras and his team, and they start really pushing this. And we had conversations at my previous school in West Baltimore, and they really helped me start framing my thought around identification, but also bringing on supports for students in the school. So I come to FSK. I'll share a little bit of a story. I know I don't have too much time, but Dennis was one of the first people I spoke to, and I got his permission to share this story. We were at Baltimore Design School at Leadership Academy, And I said, hey, Dennis, I'm moving over to FSK back home to, where I started my career. In a very Dennis way, he goes, Corey, FSK is embarrassing. And I asked him permission to say this. He said, FSK is the only school that's been an advanced academic site that does not have eGate certification. I said, okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. I started learning a little bit more. And I am proud to say that at the end of that first year, we were awarded eGate certification. So I took that challenge from Dennis and went with it. But I'll tell you this, and I say this to teachers, I say this to even families, like we got eGate that year, but we weren't really doing the stuff that I thought needed to be done. We weren't really pushing advanced learners the way we needed to. So I was at we had a showcase, and Dr. Haney may or may not remember this, said to me, hey, you might want to go talk to that person over there. And her name was Felicity Ross. And I went over there and said, hey, like I'm looking to like really push the envelope, and I'm not an expert in this, but I need people that are experts. And like, hey, maybe we can talk. And she signed on. In year 2, she was there, and she's still with us. And we've added Alex Clough as well, 2 heavy hitters in advanced learning, because it takes a team to make this stuff happen. I certainly can't and have not done this alone. I'm kind of riding on their coattails right now. So just a little bit of background on the school. We have about 585 students. When I started, we have 430. In a district that is seeing actually loss of enrollment in schools that are bleeding enrollment, we've gone up by 170 kids, and we've gone up every single year. In part, it's because I believe some of the things we're doing around advanced academics and supporting students across all grade levels. So as I mentioned earlier, when we got eGate, I said, look, like we've got to do more. We have this population of students, particularly in early elementary, that just needed another push. So with the help of Dr. Ray Limer, who's been super, super helpful at FSK, always available, always a thought partner, said we should like start some sort of like honors accelerated model in elementary. So let's do it. So we created a K1. And when you do something different, you do something outside of the box, it doesn't always land well. There's lots of meetings we had with parents, lots of convincing of teachers that this is the best way, because, those advanced learners aren't going to be in the normal class anymore, and they're not going to be able to pick up everybody up there. And, I cringe when people say that because we got to support all learners. So we created K1, and I'm happy to say now in year 6, we are scheduled for next year to have an accelerated class level at every grade level at FSK, K through 8. So we've really pushed that work. How do we do that? Some of it's early identification. We make sure that we test everybody using Naglieri, as everyone should be doing. But we do get dozens and dozens of students throughout the grades that Felicity's like, oh, we got a new student, let's test them. And we've gotten a lot of students coded as a result. We also have been big into giving the COGAT assessment. The COGAT assessment is just another layer of data that we give in pre-K so we can do some early identification. We're doing primary talent development as well. And, Felicity and Alex have been doing pull-out services. And in these honors classes or accelerated classes, I kind of toggle back and forth. Accelerated is the better name. Students are actually working above grade level content. So we have kindergartners that are diving into first grade level standards. And that pipeline, as I see, is a pendulum from K all the way to 8th. And Carrie mentioned earlier about really pushing Algebra 1. We currently have 7th graders that are sitting in 8th grade Algebra 1. And we currently have 5th graders that are sitting in 6th grade compacted curriculum, so that we are ready to give geometry in 8th grade. And that's important to me and to the Gale department, because that is, that puts us on par with some of the other districts and some of the other states that are doing geometry in 8th grade. So we are now creating this pipeline throughout the school. Currently, we have about 32% of our population is coded as advanced and gifted and advanced learners, but about another 10% that are receiving some sort of services. That could be pull-out supports from Felicity and Alex. That could be push-in supports. That could be part of the honors track that we have in middle school. So we're reaching a lot of students, and it's really exciting to know that the growth of our school, and it isn't just students coming in with advanced academics. I don't want anyone to walk away and say, hey, FSK is like pulling in from all these regions and it's just gifted and advanced. We're bringing in all types of students and all types of needs, and we're supporting all of them. This presentation happens to be about GAL. If we were talking about, students behind grade level, we would talk about that as well. But, A couple of things I want to point out about this is there's a pathway in and there's a pathway out. We have had conversations with families in kindergarten of students that are kind of right there. The parents, are pushing for the acceleration. I said, no, I think we need to they need to be in traditional, and here's why, and here's the data point. But let's look and see what happens. And then first grade, they're moving into that class. Conversely, we've had students that have struggled for a multitude of reasons. It's not just academics. It could be social, emotional. It could be students that are just not able to receive the content at that time. And so there's a pathway into the pathway out. And we're happy and proud to sit up in open houses and say, oh, you came in third grade, you're out of this. You can't be in this. No, we give that opportunity to everybody. That's something we look forward to. As I wrap up, I want to just say, as a recap, we did get eGate this year. So we went from Dennis Jutras saying we're embarrassing, but he was right. And I challenged everyone on that. I really did. I came in and challenged the staff to be like, we could be really, really, really good and we can move to great. That's my new push, good to great. So we got eGate that first year, but we got it, but we weren't doing the things, right? And years 2 through 5+ during, a pandemic, we were really pushing the envelope and really continued with that movement. And I'm happy to say that we received a perfect score on eGate, which is something we're really proud of as a school. And that took us through that stratosphere of yeah, we got it and it's cool, to yeah, we got it and we're really doing the things that matter for kids. So I'll close with that, and happy to take questions at any point later on in the presentation. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys having me.
Thanks so much, and we appreciate you being here. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christina Byers, Executive Director of High School Innovation, and I'm excited to share some information with you this afternoon on dual enrollment, which is another good news item for city schools. So I just want to begin with a little bit of data. We have, over the course of the last 5 years, been able to increase the number of students we have in city schools accessing dual enrollment courses. School year 2021 was the year we started virtually in the pandemic. But if you look from 21-22 to this school year, you do see almost a double increase. But what's even more fabulous about this is the 827 enrollments is only representative of what we could capture for first semester. And so that number for the number of students participating in dual enrollment will actually increase by the end of the 22-23 school year. Currently, 4% of all of our high school students are engaged in dual enrollment, with the bulk of them, more than half of them, in grade 12. It is exciting, though, to see that we have 15% of all of our students who are dually enrolled are in grade 10. And so you can see that students are accessing college level courses earlier in high school, which is great when we want to think about expanded opportunities specifically for acceleration. Next slide, please. Just to give you a little bit of overview and some context around what it means to be a student who is accessing dual enrollment, essentially you are taking a college level course with one of our partners, one of our college or university partners. That college level course does give you credit towards graduation. In some instances, it actually counts as a specific graduation requirement credit. And then in other instances, it may just count as an elective credit towards graduation. Currently, the majority of our students who are dually enrolled are enrolled at either BCCC at Baltimore City Community College or at the University of Baltimore. We do have some exceptions to that, depending on the courses that the university or college partner is able to offer. And so we do have some of those one-off situations where perhaps students in a CTE pathway need access to a college level course in that pathway, and it's only offered at a certain college or university. We ensure that they have access to that. We are, though, in the process, and you'll see me talk a little bit about this when we get to next steps, of really renewing some of our past partnerships, because part of our goal is to expand our partnerships so that our schools, students, and families have options when it comes to who they can enroll with in a partner situation. I do want to add that the data on the previous slide was not inclusive of more than 750 students who do access dual enrollment in some of our non-traditional schools. And Bard's High School Early College is a great example of that, since it is an early college access program. Go ahead to the next slide. The value of dual enrollment is tremendous, especially for our students in city schools. And so we have an unlimited number of courses that students may take. So there isn't a cap on the number of courses you can take. Additionally, we cover all expenses, so not just the cost of the credits, but we cover the cost of all associated fees and books. I just want to highlight here that with Kirwan and the Blueprint for Maryland, they are soon going to be requiring that legislation will be requiring all school districts, all LEAs in the state of Maryland, to be covering all of these costs. I feel like we are positioned in such a great place right now because our dual enrollment program has always done that. We have always had an unlimited number of courses, and we have always been able to cover all costs, even if transportation is a cost that we need to cover. We've been able to do that. Another benefit for our students and their families when they do access dual enrollment is that they're receiving college credit. And so when they go into either a 2-year program or a 4-year program, if that is the pathway that they choose, they are going into those programs with college credit under their belt, which means those are fewer courses that they have to pay for when they're enrolled in that 2-year or 4-year program. Keep going, thanks. And so what's next? While this is a great news item and we celebrate, there is always room for improvement, and we are always looking to grow and expand opportunities for our students. So again, I mentioned earlier that one of the things we are in the process of doing right now is really meeting with potential partners around this work. We are rich in institutes of higher education in the Baltimore area, and so we want to make sure that if there are opportunities out there for our students, that we are partnering in a way that will allow us to provide them with those opportunities. The access to dual enrollment is really something, and you're gonna, you may hear some of this from Principal Reeves, but really where the rubber meets the road with students and families understanding how to access this is at the school level. And so we want to continue to work with our leaders in the schools to make sure that these opportunities are shared with our students and families, because again, it's a great opportunity to earn a credit towards graduation and to earn a college credit and to just have access to advanced coursework while you are still in high school. And then finally, one of the things that we are going to be looking at is how do we potentially offer dual enrollment courses for students who might not be on a college pathway, but are on a career pathway. And so what are college level courses that align to, you know, perhaps their CTE pathway of study that would allow them to take advanced coursework even if their post-secondary goals and aspirations are that within a career. And so at this time, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Principal Reeves, Dr. Reeves. She is not only an outstanding person on Twitter who does this phenomenal job of sharing all of the good news of Dunbar High School with the public, and I love following her on Twitter. Actually followed you, Dr. Reeves, before I even became a City Schools employee, because she is excellent at sharing the good news. But Dr. Reeves has really created the conditions in a high school that are necessary for students to be able to access advanced pathways. So whether that's expanding her AP program, which you heard Dennis Jutras talk about earlier, dual enrollment, or looking at creative ways to ensure that within students' schedules, they have access to accelerated learning and advanced pathways, she's created those conditions. They don't just happen overnight. You really have to ensure that the culture that you've created is one where everyone believes that all students should and can have access to these opportunities. And she's done that. And so with that, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Reeves.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be invited to share some of the work that's happening at Dunbar High School. My background is I was an AP teacher. I was an AP student, and the focus of my dissertation was creating a college-going culture in an urban school community. And so a lot of my leadership is grounded in what I learned in Oakland and DC and what I'm learning every day leading Dunbar High School. Over the summer, I rewrote our vision to really kind of capture what I believe is the focus of our work. And so our vision is every student will be admitted to a 2 or 4 year college. And everything that I do, everything that we do is aligned to this belief that our young people have to have a plethora of options upon high school graduation. Some people will offer the argument that not every student is going to college. That's not a decision that we make for them, but we want every young person to have the option to pursue college if that's their family decision at the end of high school. We also know that research says that completion of an advanced placement course with a curriculum that is aligned to a college course of study can positively impact a student's preparation for college. I noted that I was an AP student who did not necessarily earn a high score on my AP exam. However, taking AP French and AP US History as a high school student certainly prepared me for college. 3.5 years ago, when I accepted this position to be the principal at Dunbar, it was really clear in talking to students and families and staff that there was a commitment and a desire to expand our AP course offerings and to be a more competitive high school in the city of Baltimore. So over the last few years, we've worked to identify teachers with a belief system that really is anchored in, can kids succeed in an AP class? That is a critical factor in expanding our program. If a teacher doesn't have the mindset that kids can do it, you don't really get the outcomes that you desire. So we've been plugging away, trying to find those teachers that have that belief system, that just need the support and the opportunity to really live out their passion. 2 years ago, we were able to partner with Equal Opportunity Schools, and it was really exciting to have a professional opportunity to engage with similar schools, to have PD and coaching, to really think about our AP program. 2 years ago, we also were able to administer the EOS Insight Survey, which also allowed us to identify students for AP classes that may not have been on our radar. So students self-selected, staff made recommendations, and we were able to really identify a broader range of students to actually enroll in AP. So when I got here, there were 3 AP classes: AP Lit, AP Lang, and AP Psychology. I'm super excited that over the last couple of years, in the midst of a pandemic, we've been able to grow our program. We now offer AP Lit, AP Language, AP Seminar, Government, US History, Spanish Language, Environmental Science, and we offered AP Psychology as well. I'm also happy that next year we're growing our program even more, and we will be offering physics, hopefully Spanish literature, African American history, which I'm hoping to co-teach that class with a prospective teacher. So I say this to say that we've been able to really strategically grow our AP offerings. We wouldn't be able to do that if our students didn't believe that they could do AP. So every year we actually allow students to pick their courses. It's something that we do very intentionally here, and we make AP available to all. So we know that there is an open access statement by the College Board that says AP classes are not based on recommendations or GPA or any kind of conditions that school sets forth. So we allow anyone who has a desire to take an AP class to sign up. We make it very clear that they are committing to the year course. So we don't allow students to transfer out. Once the course gets too difficult, we remind them that they're college bound. They can actually do this work and be successful. As we've considered our academic programming and giving kids voice and choice, the dual enrollment has also allowed us to really think about course offerings. So 2 years ago, we began to enroll our 10th graders as well as other students in dual enrollment courses. So we've offered art, psychology, upper level math, upper level English, an array of other courses that have allowed kids to just have more choice. Some of our students have found success because there's no AP exam in the BCCC dual enrollment. So it's been very strategic to actually allow kids to take a rigorous course of study, be more competitive, and then also have the option of AP or dual enrollment or hybrid of the two. We also this year offered the pre-AP courses, and so thinking about how to really leverage our fine arts department that now has a department of 4, and so we've been able to offer pre-AP music, theater, and art, as well as biology, algebra, and world history. That's been another way to give young people a chance to take a more rigorous course of study, but also make sure that our students who are our advanced kids aren't overwhelmed with 3 or 4 AP courses. So we've been really intentional in our scheduling to not just kind of flood kids with AP offerings, but really make sure that they can be successful. And I mentioned that we're really excited to be part of the pilot next year. When I received the email to teach the African American history course, I thought it was a catfish, but then it was actually a real email. So I was really excited to have that invitation. We also are going to add the pre-AP calculus and return to calculus and stats next year. One thing I think that we can't highlight enough is that you can have the mindset, the will, and the desire to be an AP student, but our young people still need more support. And so we had a call earlier today with Kaplan to look into test prep, so that we're able to really help our kids who may not just have the strategy of the AP exam to be successful. We also are really, really fortunate that I have a teacher leader who's been at Dunbar for her entire career, Ms. Maddox. And so she convenes the AP teachers, our pre-AP teachers, and they have sort of a PLC that's aimed at supporting themselves as teachers of these courses, supporting kids, but also thinking about expansion. And so that group has decided to, on March 8th, have a mock AP exam. So young people will come into the school and really experience what it's like to be an AP test taker on that day. Beyond just the AP experience and having the curriculum and having teachers who believe in your potential, it's been essential to get our young people on a college campus. And so we have a campaign this year, On the Road to 30, where we are funding at least 30 college visits. And so we've also aligned our participation on those tours to Kids GPA. So we have a gold group and a silver group. It doesn't make sense to take a student to Georgetown who's not quite there at the admissions requirement. And so we have the enrollment, the intentional scheduling, the teachers, the coursework, but then also these external experiences that really help young people see themselves on the college campus. I was sitting in my office getting ready for tonight, and I had a student come into my office, Joshua Fed, who's Harvard bound. He sits down, he opens up a book, and he says, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" And I was like, "Sure." And he reads For Invisible Man. He read a passage for about a minute. Then he asked, "What do you think of this quote?" And so can you imagine what it's like to be a principal at 3:30 in the afternoon, having a student who's been in AP, who's done concurrent enrollment, who's going to Harvard, ask you to talk about Invisible Man? So every day I get to live out my professional and personal dream to support kids of color on their journey to college. So I'm happy to share, and I really am humbled at the invitation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So this is why I think this is the best teaching and learning committee, Commissioner McFadden, because we bring such great voices to our work. I am just so proud to be able to listen to the great work of our leaders, both at the district and the school. But certainly we'll turn over back to you, Commissioner McFadden, for questions and discussion.
Thank you. And I want to thank the staff, our school leaders, everyone who has been here, but to our school leaders who are leading this work. Schools are not successful unless they have the right school leader leading them. That is just the bottom line. It doesn't matter what we do systemically. It does not matter because the curriculum will often change, policies change, right? But having the right school leader with the heart and mindset for student success is what drives student achievement. So I just want to take an opportunity to say thank you to both of our principals who are on. I also want to acknowledge Commissioner Griffin and Commissioner Brooks, who are also with us. You may not see their faces, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that our full committee is present this afternoon. I want to ask, before I open up to commissioners for any thoughts, clarifying thoughts or questions, Dr. Reeves, is Dr. Reeves leading a professional learning community with other school leaders, really using her school and the work that's happening there as a model to support other high schools within city schools? It wasn't rhetorical.
So I can answer that. Not to my knowledge, Dr. Reeves, but you correct me if I'm wrong, but Commissioner McFadden, Wonderful suggestion, because as I mentioned when I was introducing Dr. Reeves, it's really about, it doesn't just happen. It's really about being able to create the culture and the conditions to allow it to happen.
So I appreciate that, and I'm hoping that you all will move in that direction, because it's often that we have these pockets of success that we notice and see throughout the district. But how can we duplicate those pockets of success to increase achievement for as many students within city schools as we possibly can? So I think that that would be a great opportunity for us. I also have spoken to multiple students, Dr. Reeves, which is why I was at your graduation, right? Because I know multiple students who have gone through the Dunbar program and who are now in college and careers, and they talk about the way that the school feels, right? That matters to a high school student. You don't often hear high school students talk about how the school feels and how high expectations are, and they understand those expectations. And so I think that this is an important opportunity to, and this is me trying to stay the commissioner, right? But you know, I think that it would be a great opportunity for us to increase Dr. Reeves's leadership capacity in that way. Not to add any more to you or to any other principal, but I think it would be helpful. Colleagues, board colleagues, are there any additional thoughts or questions about the presentation in general? I have a few questions, but I want to make sure that we open it up to the full committee. Commissioner Griffin.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone, and good evening. Always such a pleasure to hear these updates. You all do such a great job at just outlining, like not only outlining what's happening in schools, but giving us the opportunity to hear from folks in schools, which is really like the highlight for me, honestly, as a commissioner, to hear straight from you all, straight from principals who are doing this work on the ground, to know, like, what does this look like? What does this feel like? What are the students saying? What is the community saying? So I just want to say thank you for your time. This is like in the afternoon too, and longer days, you know, and giving that information to us helps us understand better how the decisions that we make on this level impact each and every school. I just want to echo Chair McFadden's point around the ability to sustain and also replicate, right? Like that's how we, once we know we have a model that is doing great, not only in one school, but in multiple schools, and we have some spaces where we can literally measure and see the success, it's at a point where we start to think about, okay, how do we ensure this is sustainable, but also replicable in multiple schools? And what does it need in order to do that, right? Because it may not look exactly the same, but there are some pieces, some foundational pieces that can be translated. And so I love this thought of, you know, learning communities and possibly open doors where other principals get to come and see like what this model looks like in our schools that presented tonight, and how to apply those practices to their schools with the support of our staff, who's done so well at organizing the way that this program runs too, from the district level. And so I just want to say kudos and thank you, and thank you for all the work. I remember when I took my AP classes when I was in school, and what that felt like, and you know, just being able to hear how much the program has expanded and reached even more students, and students of color in particular, is something that really struck a chord with me. And so thank you for the work, and I echo the points that were made earlier, and like thoughts around sustainability and how to replicate.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Griffin. Commissioner Kenyatta Bay.
Good day. Hi, how are you doing? I had a couple of questions, and Francis Scott Key brought up a very important point. First of all, thank you. No, thank you. You're actually, I mean, you're doing tremendous work. I was a student, and they used to send me to government think tanks and stuff. So, I mean, I've been outside of that box. A lot of our AP students are sometimes in society outside of the box. And I'm curious about your SEL support within, your AP programs, because it's hard to be different. It's hard to be out front. And I wanted to know what you were looking at there. I have a couple of questions, and I'm just going to start with that. AP in the arts is another one that I just wanted to make sure that that's strengthening and becoming strong. And also costs, because that's our selling point to families. Hey, look, save money somewhere down the line. Okay, so those are the three main questions that I had, and I just want to throw it out there, let you comment. I'm going to be quiet. Peace.
I'd like to defer to Principal Reeves on the SEL supports that she's implementing at her school, because honestly, it comes down to individual teachers and what they're doing. And I think what we've done is by providing a requirement that all teachers are trained a full week before they enter AP classes, that nervousness that used to exist is not, emanating and rolling off the teacher. But Dr. Reeves, if you could speak about the SEL efforts you're doing in AP classes, I can tackle the AP art conversation piece.
Sure, that's an excellent question. I think a lot of the AP support begins with how AP is presented to students. So we spend a lot of energy and time and thought in outlining what students will experience in the AP class. So a lot of times young people sign up because they want the look on their transcript, they want the GPA boost, which is all wonderful. But hearing and seeing the textbook and understanding the amount of reading and the work that's required, that's like the first line of just messaging expectations. I'm really excited and proud that my teachers are skilled at relationship building. They know who their students are. There's lots of communication with families. We often have kids that are just crying to get out when it gets too hard. Many of the kids have always had success. And so when they run up against that first challenge, your first instinct sometimes is to want the easier course. And so I spend a lot of time myself checking in with kids, having meetings with teachers, having families come in to talk about, one, how is this experience going to better prepare you for college? I'd rather them struggle in our bubble as opposed to struggling as a freshman in college and then deciding to come home before the end of their first semester. And so I think the teachers are really encouraging. They're really organized. They communicate when things are due. They talk among each other so kids aren't really overwhelmed. We listen to students. And so when there is that overwhelm, that panic, that frustration, they're not just kind of blown off. Their counselors also do a really good job of just checking in. We probably have every student you could imagine in an AP class. We have kids with IEPs. We have star athletes. We have that first timer that might be a student with a lower GPA. So we don't really have like a prototype of an AP student. It is really come one, come all. And as long as they have the desire to give it a try, we have found that they've been really successful. Sometimes it does require like a reset and the teacher kind of saying, okay, let's pause today and let's just check in. The AP literature teacher, Miss Maddox, has been teaching the course for 7 years, and she does a really good job of just saying, hey kids, let's talk about what's happening with the quality of work, with plagiarism, whatever the issues are, so kids actually have that honest conversation. And so I think that support is just how we kind of do school here, is just listening with kids, being really empathetic, not allowing them to quit when things get hard. And then I'm always pushing, this is what you're going to experience in college. How do we use this as a learning opportunity to just really build some stamina and some resilience now?
Excuse me, can I just follow up that question real quick? Because I understand prospering within the bubble. Okay. But they exist, and our scholars exist in a bigger bubble, in the world, and that's where you have a lot of difficulties when you bump against that next level, that community level, that the environmental level that's outside of that bubble. And do we have SEL supports within reaching outside of that? And maybe that's. But I think that's important.
Dr. Reeves actually reminded me of something that's a dramatic shift over the past 20 years that I've been either an AP teacher overseeing AP efforts in the district. There was a time in this district, and no one on this call remembers those times, thank God, but there were times we dumped kids into AP classes, or we placed them, but in some cases dumped them to fill out and round out the class. The big change in the past 6 to 7 years, and Dr. Reeves hit upon it too, is that we invite students to be AP students. We don't force them into it. We certainly want to encourage them. And I love the fact that Dr. Reeves does what I did as an AP teacher. It's like, you're in this class, we're going to get through this together, and really brings that support into the classroom. So those are all definitely on point. Thank you, Dr. Reeves, for giving us the real world view at the school level. I will say AP Art has been an area, along with world languages, are the two targeted areas that we've been promoting and pushing out. I know personally we have supplied a number of AP Art teachers currently in the district with iPads and iMacs and Apple Pens so they can do digital art, because that's really the trend now in the AP Art portfolio building. And we also have had, as part of our pre-AP expansion, because when you buy one pre-AP course, you get the pre-AP art courses for free, and we love a deal. And so we've been able to encourage schools that are doing everyone wants to do the pre-AP Algebra 1, but we're like, hey, while you're doing that, let's do the pre-AP visual arts, or let's do the pre-AP dance or theater. So we're hoping to build the pipeline by doing the pre-AP art. And the next phase of this would be to introduce that at the middle school level, so that those students will have exposure to pre-AP art in middle school, and therefore be better prepared to be successful going forward in an AP art class down the road. And the other point that you asked about, Commissioner, was about the cost savings. We've always messaged, when I was an AP teacher, I always was clear with the parents that this may or may not save dollars, but it's going to save experience and time. And Dr. Reeves pointed out the fact that she may not have been a fantastic AP student on the test, and I doubt that. But I myself only got a 2 on AP European history, and I'm a history teacher by trade, right? But that experience made it more likely for me to be successful, and therefore I was not likely to waste extra dollars taking and repeating courses at the college level. So yes, in the ideal situation, you get 4s and 5s, and schools are going to give you 3 credits, 6 credits. We don't control what colleges will give credits, because again, when they give you credits, they're losing income. So we can't control that dynamic. What we can control is a level of preparedness and understanding that students, the gap between high school and college is lowered. And therefore what happens are students are much more likely to stay in college and complete it in the normal 4-year trajectory, and therefore save thousands upon thousands of dollars.
And I just also want to lift that giving kids choice in what they take as a high school student has really been a game changer for us. And so while in my mind, I have all these AP courses I'd like to offer, that won't be decided until students make their course selection. And that will then create our math schedule and what we offer. Because I think sometimes school leaders, we have in our mind, we're going to offer this, and then you actually box yourself in. But our students' interest and their passion should drive what courses we offer in schools. And we certainly can do that given our staffing paradigm and our models. And so I'm excited to see what AP courses young people are interested in, and then build from there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see Commissioner Brooks, and then Commissioner Chair Emeritus Chinya.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation, and thank you all for the incredible work that y'all continue to do day in and day out. And really, the data that you all shared is really, really impressive. And so, just wanted to give a major kudos. And actually, Commissioner Kwame had already asked my question, which was really about SEL supports, and really thinking through, and I heard like there were a bunch of different approaches that that were unique in the space. I guess what I'm curious about is that a big part of us adopting policy around sort of social emotional learning and really trying to sort of have that be embedded into and systematize into our schools. I'm interested in sort of any sort of reflections on the engagement with that policy, and sort of the practices that are associated with doing sort of embedding SEL into sort of the normal scope of the day-to-day of the school of Dunbar, given that the students are living and navigating complicated social realities, both contemporary and historical. So I would love just any reflections that you might have, and sort of what would you say for schools where we continue to struggle with climate issues and challenges, any sort of strategies or approaches that you can take from what your teachers are doing in that space that might be sort of broadened.
Yep, you said a lot. I think the school climate is something that is a buzzword and something that we're all thinking about, particularly with what's happening in a lot of schools. I think for me, that academic culture sets the foundation for the climate of the school. That if young people are focused and organized around their future, I do think that can mitigate against some of the things that happen. We also have advisory, which I also thought this year when we rolled it out, I was like, ooh, one more thing, how are we going to pull this off? And so in our network, advisory meets every day, which I'm actually happy about. And so we have advisory for 30 minutes a day. And I know that's across all CLN schools. And so we've been able to do a bunch of things in advisory. We provide teachers with a slide deck every day. It's announcements or maybe activities, there's goal setting. And some teachers are probably better at it than others. But I think when we think about SEL, it makes me remember that like going to summer camp and having that camp leader that was very different than maybe my algebra teacher. And so that's a different skill set. I can be a great algebra teacher, but I could also not be really well versed in providing SEL support for kids. And so thinking about what teachers need to build relationships, to be empathetic, to do RJ circles, to do whatever is needed to kind of create this safe space. So I think we do a good job as a school community in making kids feel like they're in this bubble, but I think their individual experience is different from teacher to teacher. I would be wrong to say that every teacher is great at providing that support, because some people are just better at it than others. And not everybody has that personality to be kind of warm and fuzzy. And so that's been something that has been a challenge. Also, when we think about, you go to school to be an algebra teacher, like you get trained in pedagogy around algebra, around history. Teacher preparation does not include SEL. I haven't had a class on that even as a school leader. And so that has been challenging. And so we've tried to create some Band-Aids and create some opportunities, but it's difficult at the high school level to create, I think, that SEL experience that I think we envision is possible for kids. That is difficult.
Is it okay if I jump in here? And Dr. Reeves, I've just been enthralled by your descriptions here, so I'm really enjoying it. I will say, I think both commissioners are hinting at the fact that with gifted learners, there are often social emotional needs that need to be addressed that we will see like hypersensitivities around. Corey, I don't want to put you on the spot, but we talk a little bit about supporting emotional needs of gifted learners, the program you ran for just a minute.
Yeah, we have a program that is ran by a couple of our staff members that actually approaches the parents, saying, I actually don't know exactly what that stands for, Laura, but it's really
supporting the emotional needs of gifted learners. I covered it for you, so you didn't have to.
There you go. It's really a class aimed at the parents. So the parents oftentimes have questions about how they can support at home, how that impacts students in school. And I mean, some of our probably most, I don't want to say challenge, that's not the word I want to use, but we have a lot of students that are in our accelerated track that struggle with social dynamics, that struggle with play outside. And so there is like extra conversation with parents, trying to put the student in the best position to succeed with their peers. And so that we've certainly had that. And I think parents are always, I'm finding parents are more aware and more willing to ask for supports in the last 4 to 5 years. And I think COVID might have something to do with that, where I think back in the day, it was like, oh no, everything's fine, right? Like, my kid's okay. Where now parents are more willing to have conversations, more willing to talk about 504 plans, more willing to go to the IEP table. We have several twice exceptional students. So it's definitely something that we are trying to approach through parent support. We also have, we adopted Second Step this year. I think our implementation's been okay. I think it's an area of growth. Restorative practices, we're getting more additional hours from the district. Thank you guys, to kind of refreshen our knowledge about restorative practice. Ultimately for me, and Dr. Reeves said this, is like, there are teachers that are really good at this, like having a conversation with a kid, building a relationship, asking the right questions. You just don't come up through education with that skill. So that's something that some people are really good at, and others are not. But I think we are absolutely trying our best to support the SEL framework for the students that are in our honors track and non-honors track, and then our twice exceptional.
And thank you for that. That was just a thank you, Commissioner Brooks?
Yes, it was just a thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis, for putting in the chat, and Commissioner Brooks, I'm not sure if you saw it, but he added a part of the, he's going to add an SEL component to the proposed AP high school teacher training for the summer as a result of this discussion. So that will be helpful. Chair Emeritus, I saw your hand go away.
Only because you called my name, so I figured you knew I was in the queue. Sorry about that, but I'm still here. First, I want to say kudos and ditto to everything that has been said previously by the other commissioners. Someone mentioned that some people probably haven't been around. I think you said that, Dennis, but some of us have been around long enough to be able to appreciate today's presentation. From the days of literally feeling like only certain children could be considered as gifted, to I am so proud to really, and happy to hear us understand that giftedness is not a measure of your family's economics or necessarily where you live. So I'm grateful for that. I was also grateful to hear a full spectrum and continuum of opportunities, choices for students from elementary through grade 12. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I personally think that one great strategy around the whole issue of SEL is the fact that we are opening this area and having the attitude and the commitment to say that any student can show some areas of giftedness, and we need to be ready to address them. So thanks. One question that I do have, because you mentioned in the dual enrollment, the fact that another thing that we've been doing all along, but that now is a part of the legislation around the funding. And so I just wanted to know what impact that legislation might have then in terms of funding for us in the future around dual enrollment, because I know it's going to increase.
Thank you. So our hope is that it increases. I think because our funding model has always been to not cap the number of courses, or to like oftentimes if an LEA maybe is covering the course of the credits, the family may be picking up a registration fee, right, or a book fee. And since our funding model has always been an unlimited number of courses, as well as covering all associated fees, we've been able to build out what that could reasonably look like as we continue to grow opportunities for students. I think it becomes more challenging when you're trying to account for increased programming and costs that you didn't traditionally assume. And so we're not accounting for both of those things. We're just accounting for increased opportunity.
Okay. And so I'm assuming then, hopefully, that a part of the funding, earmark funding from the current legislation includes funding for that. Great. Okay. Thank you. And please continue the great work. And as everyone has said, this was a great thing. Last thing I will say is somehow we have got to get this information out more broadly to the public. It's wonderful to hear these great reports. As a commissioner, it's wonderful when you come before the school board, but somehow we just got to get this out a little bit further, because this is great news that I think all of Baltimore needs to know. Thank you.
I agree, Chair Emeritus. I want to go back to the Algebra 1 discussion for a moment. It's nice to see that we are increasing, students who are taking Algebra 1 courses particularly in the middle grades, and we know that will certainly impact the work that principals like Dr. Reeves do also at the high school level. I'm curious to know, are we looking at Algebra 1 in the same way as far as access is concerned, right? So is it a matter of exposure that we want to provide students, or are there prerequisite skills that we're looking to build, right, within our students and within our teachers to be able to be successful in Algebra 1, I'm assuming by the 8th grade? And so I'd like to hear a little bit about that, in addition to it's one thing to increase the numbers, but what does proficiency look like in Algebra 1 over time? So as we're increasing the amount of students who are taking these Algebra 1 courses, what does proficiency look like? Then to a principal like Dr. Reeves or our high school students, how then are these students who are taking Algebra 1 classes being received or scheduled at the high school level? So I'm curious to know, how are we equitably identifying students for that Algebra 1 access? And then what is the proficiency rate for those students who are in those courses?
Sorry, yes, I can address those questions. So access, we use almost identical identifiers that we use for our gifted and advanced students, which also includes, as we've heard in the conversations from principals, talking to the students and ensuring that they are on the appropriate pathway for them, not just based even on the data that we have around them with mathematics, and ensuring that we're also looking at how many students are enrolled in those courses. Around the access piece. And the biggest thing in Baltimore City is just providing that opportunity at every middle school for students that are ready and able to take Algebra 1, and ensuring that they have that access at their school. Proficiency, we know with the data that has been coming out, our kids have been through a lot in the last couple of years. And so we are really looking to build that. And what you mentioned, Commissioner McFadden, around building capacity is key, particularly around teacher content knowledge and not just offering Algebra 1, but also offering those honors courses beforehand so that students are prepared for Algebra 1 when they enter into that course, whether it be in 8th grade or 9th grade. MCAP is here. We've gotten some data, and that test, that assessment, that state assessment is, going to start counting again. And so we do need to start looking at those data points and looking at our scope and sequence of what we have included in Algebra 1 and making sure that students have what they need, prior to taking that, since that is a graduation requirement.
Thank you, and thank you to so principal at Francis Scott Key, can you pronounce your last name? Names are important to me, and I want to make sure that it is correct.
It's Basmajian, but feel free to call me Corey. I don't take myself that serious. I'm good there.
Principal Basmajian, I appreciate you for what you put in the chat. I would like to hear, as we move forward, a more standardized approach to identification. So I know that there is, we're looking at honors level courses. I see, Principal Basmajian put something in the chat. But I think if we are looking at board priorities, board goals, and district goals, right, how we want to move our students, Algebra 1 is a lever, right, that helps us to support students in their careers, their academic careers, and in their life choices. And so I would be interested to hear a little bit more as we move forward, how we standardize our approach to identification across the board, so that we can really support all of our students in all of our communities. I think that's important. Commissioner Kenyatta Bay. Commissioner Kenyatta Bay, I see your hand.
Sorry about that. I was still on mute. Okay. I have found a lot of talent, a lot of capability within our English language learners. Okay. And a lot of the AP programming has been, very much, and reasonably so, language-based, English-based, and even we're dealing with the language of math. But I've seen some scholars that I think are like phenomenal, but they're overlooked because they're English language learners. How do we bring that community, because we have a large population that's growing within the city, how do we bring this population into the benefits of our AP and our algebra advanced training? Sorry.
I'm happy to take first stab at this if anybody else. So I have the privilege of working with both ESOL and gifted programming, so I'm happy to take first stab. I will say nationally, we have one of the higher rates of identified gifted ELs of English learners. We've talked about this in the past. I'm happy to talk more about it, but our approach to this is very much around looking at a nonverbal assessment. Principal Reeves, I could even use as an example. They have had a very rapidly growing English learner population, or multilingual learner, which is what we prefer the terminology to use. I think they've almost doubled their numbers over the past couple of years. We have more and more students going to entrance criteria schools. What's also very interesting, and not data we brought today, we can bring in the future, is our exited EL. So these are our students who came to us, who received ESOL service and who no longer receive ESOL service, are making up very high percentages of our entrance criteria schools. I think I recently pulled the number for Poly, it was 13% were exited English learners. So when we've looked at our exited English learners on standardized tests, on graduation rates, we've seen very strong performance, which is really a good indicator that our English learners are being engaged in rigorous academic content. Specifically around the AP strategy, and Dennis, feel free to jump in as you see fit. We've also looked at opportunities to leverage their skills and their outline. So for example, looking at AP Spanish and enrolling them in an AP Spanish class. We've also just recently started talking about a prep native language course prior to that, like a heritage Spanish into an AP Spanish class, so we can leverage their native language. So we actually have been really thinking about this. I don't know, Commissioner Reeves, you've had a very rapidly growing, and actually, Corey, you've had a pretty rapidly growing multilingual learner population. If either of you want to add to what I'm saying, or Dennis, if you'd like to add anything. But I'm so glad you asked the question, because this is really a high priority for us, as you can imagine. And something we're very proud of, the work we've done around supporting our multilingual learners, especially around the gifted work.
I would just echo that. This was the first year we offered AP Spanish language, and it was a stretch because many of our students haven't had that intermediate level course, but I was in the class yesterday, and so to hear the teacher teach the entire class in Spanish, and to have students whose native language is Spanish also mix in the class with African-American students was actually really joyful to see. And even though the results on the AP exam may not be as high as we would like, I do think having our native speakers in Spanish 1, Spanish 2 wasn't the best option. So really making sure that our native Spanish speakers felt challenged in the curriculum. I'm thinking about how we can add that literature course next year or the following year to really beef up the rigor that our native speakers will experience has been really important to us.
I will say that if Dr. Reeves is successful, and I expect that she will be, in adding AP Spanish Lit, they'll be the first time we have a world language literature course. Typically, we stop the line at language, and we really should be offering that literature opportunity for our students who are fluent and are well-versed in another language. So to Laura's point, Dr. Ohanyan's point, yes, part of our strategy has been to expand the field of world languages that are AP level, so students who are much more fluent in those languages can feel comfortable and have success and be applauded, and that allows them to feel more confident in other areas that are not necessarily their strong points, but they can certainly demonstrate that strength. I also dropped into the chat that as a result of this conversation. Our partners in OAA have been fantastic with creating a robust AP data file. We have not had a filter specifically for ELs, and to Laura's point, our exited ELs. I have no doubt, I know anecdotally, that many of our exited ELs are fantastic AP students, and because they acquired a whole nother language very quickly, which I can't even get through English. So that's fantastic. And I know that they're in those AP courses, but I've asked our partners in OAA to add that. So next time we present to the board, we will have that data, because I think it's important to track that. And if the numbers are not where they need to be, we need to work on that.
Thank you for that. I want to go back also to Dennis. I appreciate you lifting IHBB, the policy that speaks to identifying students for honors and AP courses. It would be helpful to see some more of that information spelled out in presentations like this, so that we can kind of do some double duty, right? Like beyond it just being in a compliance report, this is a more appropriate setting for that information to be illuminated, to kind of support our thinking as a board as we're looking at policy implementation and oversight, how students are being identified for these honors courses, but certainly Algebra 1. And then, you know, how are they doing as we're increasing the numbers of students who are sitting in the courses, both in person and virtually. Kudos for that. What is that success rate, right? And also, I would be interested in the age that we live in. What are the benefits of students taking the course virtually and in person, right? Do we see any differences? Are there any benefits? Are there any challenges? And what are potential policy or budget implications as a result of that information that we see? So that will be helpful to see in the future. And then also, I know that one of the challenges I saw around AP teaching was that gradual release of instruction from our teachers. So just over time, I know that PD is as Commissioner Brooks would say, is his jam, that SEL work is his jam. Professional learning and development is mine. I will be interested in hearing more about how we're modeling and demonstrating for teachers the ability to gradually release instruction to really allow students to grapple, have that time to really grapple and struggle, that productive struggle that they need in order to be successful. So thank you. Anything else from my board colleagues before we move into the procurement agenda?
Nope, nothing from me.
Thank you.
Nope, none for me, Commissioner McCratton.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So hearing, thank you. So hearing none, we just want to take another opportunity to say thank you to all the folks who are working tirelessly each and every day for our young people. Thank you for the work that you're putting in, and be mindful to also balance yourselves in the work. It's critically important, so that we are all ready and prepared to do our best work for children and communities every day. So thank you all for your time this afternoon, staff, and we're going to now move into our procurement agenda for this afternoon.
Hello, can you see and hear me? Sorry,
We can see and
camera's-
hear you, Ms.
Okay,
Shabray
thank you.
Matthews. Hello, how are you?
Hello, doing well. Hope everyone's having a good day today. Okay, so we have 8 items on the procurement agenda for consideration today. Do we have any questions?
I do have questions about them. So today, this afternoon, can we go through each of them, please?
Sure. Okay, section 12, .01, Leaders of Tomorrow Youth Center. The Chief Academic Officer and the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning request the board's approval of a contract with Leaders of Tomorrow Youth Center to provide supplemental fine arts programming, including visual and performing arts. The contract term is February the 15th, 2023 through June 30th, 2025, and the estimated total contract amount is $4.5 million.
So with this particular item, I know that this particular vendor has come to the board previously, and I appreciate you all mentioning, there are some things that have been corrected, and which is why it is coming back to us today. I'm seeing a contract term for $4.5 million over the course of 2 years, and of course, schools will be able to use as they see fit. A couple of things that I just want to raise. The evidence of effectiveness is really coming from 2 particular schools, and I know that this is a vendor that works with multiple schools. I'm curious to know if we can see spelled out a bit more effectiveness across the board with the vendor. I'm also curious to know, I know in the letter it speaks to schools hiring arts staff, teachers first, and then using this particular vendor as a potential supplement to the arts instruction that is occurring. I just want to make sure that we're staying true to the fidelity of that being lifted in the letter. Certainly, we want to make sure that we have robust experiences for our young people, but I want to make sure that we're hiring our teachers and then supporting with the vendor, if I'm making sense.
Yes.
And so the 4.5 mil, hello there, soon to be Dr. Williams.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. So that 4.5 million over 2 years, I'm saying that that is what has been historically used, or that amount?
That amount, Commissioner, is reflective of their fees prior to pandemic, and then also an increase that other partners have received to reflect inflation.
I see. So can we get spelled out a little bit more intently, more of the evidence of effectiveness for the vendor prior to this coming to the board for a full vote?
That's a me question. Can we get more evidence of effectiveness? Commissioner, would you mind asking, maybe reframing your question? I'm sorry.
So I see 2 schools, right? I know that this vendor works with multiple schools or has in the past. Do we have any more exit data? Do we see any alignment to curriculum within the city schools program? Are we seeing any type of student achievement data outside of, yes, the qualitative information is nice from those 2 schools, but are we able to quantify any additional data to say that as a result of us using this particular vendor, we're seeing some success in other areas throughout curriculum and maybe even cross-curricularly?
Yes, sir. So I think the best way to answer that particular question is that we do not have any more recent data prior to the first submission of this letter, because we were not monitoring LTYC, and given some challenges that we've had, Commissioner, we had to use what we had. And so I respectfully request that if you have some specific questions about that maybe that's a conversation we have offline.
Understood. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there any additional thoughts with this particular item?
Nope, not for me.
Thank you.
Section 12.02, the Fund for Educational Excellence fiscal sponsor of Middle Grades Partnership. The Chief Academic Officer and the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning request the board's approval of a contract with the Fund for Educational Excellence fiscal sponsor of MGP to provide summer academic and enrichment programming. The contract term is February the 15th, 2023 through February the 14th, 2026. The estimated total contract amount is $650,000.
With this particular vendor, I think there are 8 of our schools. Are we looking to expand, or is it just those 8 that this particular letter is for, or how do we choose the 8 that are identified in this particular letter?
So, Commissioner McFadden, hi, this is Lori Lynn.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So, the schools that are listed in the board letter are the schools that have been engaging in this partnership for a number of years. The school that we are looking to expand is actually a principal you just spoke to over at Francis Scott Key. So we are actually looking to add this to our portfolio of options for middle school. Corey is really interested in bringing this program to his school. So there is criteria that's pretty spelled out for schools to be ready for this partnership. And the idea is to grow the partnership within the school over time. But for right now, we are just looking to expand it to be at one additional school as an opportunity for the middle grades at Francis Scott Key.
Not Booker T or the Stadium School?
It could be a possibility. It could be a possibility. Actually, the principal did reach out as being interested for this partnership. It doesn't mean that we can't expand further, right? Under an approved contract, but it is the planning that goes into the partnership, even just for launch in the summer program. We're actually kind of behind. So we would be, if we were to expand beyond 9 schools, which would include Francis Scott Key, then we would just need a longer runway to do that planning. Because there is a lot of student data that we look at in the readiness of the school building or the school and the administration in the building to really accept this partnership, because it is kind of a unique partnership, but we definitely could think about expanding in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any additional questions from board colleagues? Thank you, Shabray.
Welcome. 12.03 Wide Angle Youth Media. The Chief Academic Officer and the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning request the board's approval of a contract with Wide Angle Youth Media to provide their Community Voices, Baltimore Speaks Out, and high school media arts programming workshops for students in grades 5 through 12. The contract term is February 15th, 2023 through February 14th, 2026. The estimated total contract amount is $225,000.
This is Commissioner Brooks, and this is not necessarily related to this overall. I'm just curious, particularly looking at sort of the variabilities in the dollar amounts, and I'm just wondering, is there are the contracts and the rates being generated by the organizations, and do we do any sort of comparative matching to ensure that, for example, if an organization like this, which we know is important and critical to our schools, that value versus sort of what we see like a $4.5 million contract, like what's like, how do we get to sort of that number for that school, for this particular program where it seems like such a small number, yet it's such a critical component to the advancement of our students? So that might be a broader conversation, but that's what just came up for me as I was looking at the other procurements and thinking like, oh, why wouldn't this be like a $500,000 contract or more, or whatever it is? Just given that we know so much about it, and it's great.
Well, we can provide some historical information if we've used the vendor before over a 3-year period. Once the sponsoring department evaluates the proposal and they want to move forward with the vendor, we provide that historic information. They also take the rates into consideration, and Casey can speak a little bit more about the formula that they use.
Thanks, Shabray. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Casey Mengel. I'm the special assistant in the chief academic office. I mean, in general, so as you see, I mean, a lot of our vendors come in with different price points. This particular vendor came in through our recent 2022 PQS process. And so through that process, the vendors define both their capacity to serve and the dollars associated with that capacity. So for this particular vendor, the price points that you see reflect what they're able to provide to the extent possible per their submission there. So at this point in time, you know, should we spend that amount, that would really cover their full capacity to provide what they can into schools at this point in time. A PQS doesn't behold us to spending that amount. It allows us to spend up to that amount in the district, which is what they have the capacity to fulfill, which is different, for example, than the avenue through which the Leaders of Tomorrow came through, right? That's a different procurement process, and therefore the judgment around those dollar figures looks different. So this one is a PQS on the other hand, so it comes through sort of with their capacity, and that's what we base our dollar valuation on. I hope that helps.
Yeah, super helpful, Casey. Is there any way that's in writing so that I can actually be sort of caught up to speed on sort of those different mechanisms and sort of like the price points?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll defer back to Shabray. I know that we do have some resources that spell out the differences between those procurement avenues, if you will. There's a very small line item in each of the board letters under selection methodology, where it gives a whole bunch of like solicitation process jargon, if you will. No offense, Shabray, but that's like hard, right? We don't decipher that. That's not like common kind of language. But happy to work with the Office of Procurement in providing you all with sort of like those distilled processes and what it kind of like nets out for us when we look at price points and things like that. I'm happy to support that.
Thank you.
Of course.
And I think
Thanks, Shabray.
I think it's also important to note, and Commissioner Brooks, I appreciate you for raising that clarity. I think it would be helpful for all of the board to just be refreshed on that. But even looking at the evidence of effectiveness that we see for this particular vendor wide angle, we see over time the amount of students that were served. We see the demographic breakdown. We see some skill growth there. We see correlation between national standards and social emotional learning. That I know that perhaps the solicitation process that they're different, but we're still able to see some of that when it comes to us, unlike what we saw first this afternoon. So thank you, Dr. Brooks, for raising that. It would be helpful to see more evidence like this included, right, across the board to kind of help us make decisions, at least for me. Can't speak for the board, but at least for me.
Thank you for that, Commissioner. I do know that something that academics, to that very point, is really interested in doing is identifying procurement processes through which we're asking for all that information on the front end of a procurement so that we have it for you, as opposed to having to go back and say, hey, what was the evidence for this? You came through this process. So it's something on our minds as well, and something that we're prioritizing in academics anyway. So thank you for raising it.
Commissioner Kenyatta Bay.
I'm sorry, I still have my hand up, but it was exactly the same question. How come we don't have this information? presented beforehand, because we need this information to make a reasonable decision. And that's basically it. You know, I mean, projections are one thing, you know, but what are the results? Where have we been? And where are we going with this? And why should we support this? So that is my question. And it's the same as Commissioner McFadden and Commissioner Brooks raised. It's the same question. Sorry.
Thank you.
Section 12.04, Child First Authority, Inc. The Chief Academic Officer and the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning request the board's approval of a contract with Child First Authority to provide out-of-school time and summer academic and enrichment programming. The contract term is February 15, 2023 through February 14, 2026. The estimated total contract amount is $1,050,000. Continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. Section 16.01, the Chief Human Capital Officer requests the board's approval to increase the contract with Robert Half International, Inc. from $50,000 to $150,000, an increase of $100,000 to continue to provide contingent executive search support services. The contract term is July 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2023.
So with this as well, right? I spoke to our operations chair as well about it before this afternoon. The evidence of effectiveness here is minimal for the increase. I'm not sure if that strikes anything for any other commissioner, but for me it kind of does. Like, what is the success rate? It's like three sentences in that evidence of effectiveness. Why is it someone that we should trust? Why is this a vendor that we should trust in supporting us as we're preparing for, you know, the ERP, like all of these things? It would just be helpful to see a little bit more substance in the evidence of effectiveness here.
Commissioner
Understood,
McFadden, would it be helpful and or appropriate for me to share a little more context about that procurement item right now?
Sure.
Great. So Robert Half provides a variety of staffing services. The district has worked with them mostly previously on some specialized temp services in creative services and some technical programming projects, is my understanding. We started working them in human capital to help find more leadership candidates in highly specialized areas. So Chief Tommy Jones had reached out to me because he had a director role on his team that has been vacant since April. It's a very specialized role, director of IT application development and integration. Human capital doesn't have the tech Rolodex to be able to find them, and the team hadn't been able to find a successful candidate either, despite reviewing and interviewing multiple candidates. So I reached out to a variety of search firms to see who was interested in this search and was willing to take it on contingency. We had a few different firms offer to work with us in that capacity. And the IT team reviewed the candidates that they sourced, did a number of interviews, and based on that, their preferred candidate is someone that Robert Half has sourced. We do want to run a full competitive procurement process for that, and we're in the process of getting an RFP posted. But in the meantime, we sort of ran an informal competitive process by reaching out to a variety of firms and inviting them to share candidates with us, and then competitively assessing the candidates to see who's going to be the best fit for city schools. And Robert Half was successful with that. This increase will allow the teams that were using the temp services to continue that, but to be able to pay to secure the start of the preferred candidate for this position that's been vacant for 10 months and is really critical to our AMP implementation and success and the ongoing district operations as supported by the IT team.
Chief Nielsen, can some of that be captured in the letter to the full board prior to Tuesday?
Yes, I believe it is in the materials that I submitted to procurement. Is there an additional document that I should produce, Shabrae?
Let me, I'll go back through the scope and through the letter. I think it is.
Okay.
But if, once we go back through Commissioner McFadden's comments, we'll be able to add additional information.
Thank you, because I would absolutely want to provide that additional context to the full board in making a decision on this procurement request.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
No.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on. Section 19.01. The Chief of Schools Office and the Executive Director of Whole Child Services and Support request the board's approval of a contract with Future Makers to provide support to student educators and caregivers in tackling social emotional learning based design challenges that activate science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. Identities and support positive growth of students and families through making. I think that may be missing something, but the contract term is February 15th through 2023 through February 14th, 2026. The estimated total contract amount is $240,000. So I'll check and see if that's a program that maybe got cut off, and we'll make that correction.
Thank you. I think we can move to the next one.
Section 19.02, the Chief of Schools Office and the Executive Director of Whole Child Services and Support request the board's approval of a contract with Pride Youth Services to provide city school students with resources and programming centered on social, emotional, and physical development to equip them with the confidence and skills to make healthy, positive choices. The contract term is February 15th, 2023 through February 14th, 2026. The estimated total contract amount is $450,000.
Yeah, so this is Commissioner Brooks. I was wondering if there were any specifics in, because I'm looking at the evidence of effectiveness here, and it just says recent evaluation of the program, which included more than 200 participants, strongly regarded the future of achieving goals and developing healthy relationships. But I don't actually see any numbers. Is there something missing?
Hi, this is Laura Fields. I supported the evaluation of this vendor. I can definitely go back and check the materials that were submitted on behalf of the PQS from the vendor and double check. I believe they did have figures that are missing.
Okay, I'd love to see those.
Okay, next item is section 19.03. The Chief of Schools and the Executive Director of the Office of Whole Child Services and Support request the board's approval of a contract with Thread Inc. to provide their Thread hours after school programming for high school students. The contract term is February 15th, 2023 through February 14th, 2026. The estimated total contract amount is $1.8 million.
So this is Commissioner Brooks again. So I don't necessarily have a question about this particular one, but I'm just curious to hear about sort of why there are so many inconsistencies in terms of describing the same outcomes for the sections. So if you look at each procurement item, we know that the framework says evidence of effectiveness, and yet some of them have a lot of robust data and information about the evidence of effectiveness, and other of them literally have like nothing. And so I'm just curious as to why that is.
So from a procurement perspective, when we receive the letters, because we have, especially for the Teaching and Learning Committee, we have heard Commissioner Brooks and Commissioner McFadden speak to this almost every meeting. So we try, when we receive the letters, we are, pushing back to say, Commissioner Brooks may want to see this, or Commissioner McFadden may want to see that. So I think maybe since these are academic sampleness letters, they may have to speak to, what they have provided in terms of content.
And thank you. And I don't know, Commissioner McFadden, like, are there any like additional supports that we could offer to sort of make sure that we get the, consistency along these items?
Sure, I think it's something that we definitely can talk about and consider moving forward. I think the more data possibly available to include in these particular letters to inform our decisions, I think would be helpful, because we don't always experience the day-to-day operation of a lot of these vendors. So we're really trusting staff to bring as much information, as much data. How are we seeing impact on student achievement? What are the demographics of, recipients of services or experiences being offered to our students? That can be helpful. Geographically, where are these programs located? Which communities are benefiting from programs more than others? How do they directly align to our goals and strategic priorities, more than just identifying them at the beginning of a letter, but actually targeting some evidence to support we're moving in the right direction? So I think as we continue to sit in these meetings, I think it's important for us to continue to have these conversations, but at some point, it's important for us to see, for example, more than 3 sentences without, a lot of data gathered there to kind of inform our fiduciary responsibility as board commissioners.
Great, thank you.
Understood.
Dr. Warren, I see you're here. And I'm sorry, 1 second, Commissioner Kenyatta Bay, I saw your hand.
I'm sorry, my hand was still up because I totally concur that the information that we have for the request for this information needs to be a lot more specific and a lot be designed so that we get the information we need to make the proper decision. So I totally agree. With Commissioner McFadden, and Commissioner Brooks on that. So I didn't mean to leave my hand up because they both covered that information.
Dr. Warren.
Thank you. I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for the feedback. I think it's important for all of our teams to hear, and we will certainly, I think, work with everybody who's doing these reviews and writing the letters to make sure that we're putting forward more detail like that. I do think that one of the things that happens is that the proposals come in with highly varied amounts of evidence, and some of our smaller partners have less robust research behind some of their programming. And so partly I think that's being reflected here too. So we try to draw as much as we can from the proposal, and then if necessary, go back and ask the partners to give more. But this is something we have talked about, and we know that we need to work on. And I think going back to Casey Mengel's point from earlier, we also have talked about how we can improve the way we frame the questions in our process so that we're sure we're getting the most robust possible responses and really very closely tailored to what we actually need from the partners so that the evidence they provide is really better linked to what we're asking for. So I think it's sort of on both the front end and the back end that we can improve the process. And I just want to say, I think we hear you and we will work on it. So we appreciate the feedback.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
hope so.
And yeah, I do. And I just have, I just kind of wanted to raise a little bit of a response, Dr. Warren, and in that, so I was, I think sort of the work of sort of the procurement process, ensuring that the way in which we are framing the questions elicits the best data for us to make decisions as board members. And I think I'm struggling with two things because of the fact that we keep having the same conversations. I'm trying to figure out, do we not believe it matters that we would have these detailed descriptive measures in order for us to make a decision? And if these procurement options, these organizations, these vendors are working with our young people in charge with their academic and social emotional well-being, why wouldn't we have a robust data set of information to be able to make those decisions? If we believe that it matters that our students get the best high quality, well-researched and supported, and that research might not necessarily be more traditional, but it can be other forms of research as well. So I just want to sort of to layer in that piece of, I'm just not harping on the fact that we don't have the right information, but it's like, I believe that every student in Baltimore City deserves the best quality. I can't make a judgment on the quality when there's no information. And so that's where I struggle here. And the point about sort of smaller entities versus larger, so it seems like some of our smaller ones have actually had the best data. It's some of the larger ones who maybe don't think they have to have the data, or it's lost in the process that doesn't seem to have it. And so I just kind of wanted to push back so that, not to suggest that because our smaller organizations, they are smaller, doesn't mean that they're not collecting the data. If they can do it, these larger ones with 4.5 million and so forth and requests can do it also. And so I just kind of wanted to put that out there.
I appreciate that, Dr. Brooks, because when you look at wide angle media, right, and what we saw in some of their success and some of their evidence, they're not as large as an organization or vendor as some of the others. So I appreciate you for raising literally what we're seeing in this particular meeting, right? And then using our past experiences as well, but looking at what was presented to us today to kind of help shape the conversation. So I appreciate that, Commissioner Brooks.
And I appreciate you for having us walk through it too. So thank you. So we can actually just hear each and every one and see it really in a really meaningful way.
Are there any additional thoughts or questions? Great, thank you, Shabre. And hopefully we can receive a few responses. I know you all were tracking and listening to our discussion this evening, so hopefully we'll see some things prior to the end of the week.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Our next meeting will be on March 7th. This committee will meet again on March 7th at 3:30 p.m. The agenda items are R3 presentation, R restore, reimagine, reconnect. 3R focusing on wholeness. We'll have an update in addition to virtual learning update. We'll also see a compliance report around policy IKEB, graduation standards. And certainly we know that one of our district goals directly aligns to increase graduation rates. So we're looking forward to receiving that information for the next meeting. Also to members of the public, as many, there may be some on this call, but certainly those who may watch the replay, we encourage members of the public in our communities, various stakeholders, to engage with us during these committee meeting settings and sessions. So advanced sign up is permitted at 9 a.m. the Thursday before our meetings until 5 p.m. the Monday prior to the meeting. Please contact the board office. I know that Jonathan Turner put some information in the chat earlier, but please contact contact our board office or email schoolboard@bcps.k12.md.us should you like to comment or participate in our committee meetings or our board meetings, public meetings. It's the same process. Is there anything else from any of our board colleagues before we end this meeting this evening?
Nope, none for me.
Tanisha, Ms. Moore, is there any additional information that we need to cover before we end?
No, we are all good for the order. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, and I want to make sure we heartily, I'm making stuff up now because I shouldn't use that word like that, but we are excited to welcome a new commissioner on, not just to this committee, but to our board. We are welcoming new commissioners, it seems like constantly, but we're happy to have Commissioner Kenyatta Bay, who has joined us as an educator on this committee. So we're happy to have your perspective and your brain in this work with us. So with that, everyone, it is 5:24. Please balance yourselves. Have a great evening. And the public board meeting of the entire board will convene this coming Tuesday. Exec session is at 3:30, and then the public meeting will begin at 5. Have a great evening, everyone. Take care. Happy Black History Month also to everyone.
Thank you.
Good night. Good evening.
Mm.